I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am, 3 a.m., unable to sleep, wondering if what I did makes me the worst person alive or if I'm finally free. My husband, Mark, and I have been married for 8 years, together for 10. We met in our late 20s, both working decent jobs in Chicago. He was an accountant at a mid-sized firm, and I worked in marketing for a healthcare company. Nothing fancy, but we were comfortable. About 3 years into our marriage, I started noticing small changes. Mark became more secretive with his phone, would take calls in the other room, and spent more time on his laptop after I went to bed. At first, I thought maybe he was planning a surprise or going through work stress, but then I found the first bank statement. It was tucked inside one of his old college textbooks that I was packing for donation. A savings account I'd never heard of, opened 2 months after we got married with regular deposits of $500 to $800 every month. By the time I found it, there was already $28,000 in there. My stomach dropped because we'd been having conversations about not being able to afford a house, about putting off having kids because money was tight. Yet here he was, secretly stashing away nearly 30 grand. I didn't confront him immediately. Something told me to dig deeper first. Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own home. I found emails buried in an old folder on our shared computer, messages between Mark and someone named Jessica. Turns out Jessica was his college girlfriend, the one he'd told me was ancient history. The emails went back 18 months, starting innocently enough, but quickly becoming inappropriate. They were planning to meet up, talking about their old relationship, and worst of all, Mark was telling her how unhappy he was with me. The real gut punch came when I found his detailed plan. Yes, an actual written plan saved on his laptop under a folder called New Life. He calculated exactly how much money he needed to leave me high and dry, enough for a security deposit on a new apartment, money to establish himself independently, and a buffer while he figured out his next steps. He wanted to drain our joint accounts right before leaving, knowing I'd be stuck with the mortgage and bills. The plan included timelines, specific amounts, and even notes about when to serve the divorce papers to maximize his advantage. But the worst part? He'd been in contact with Jessica for over 2 years at this point, and they were planning his exit strategy together. She lived in Portland now, had a good job in tech, and they'd been fantasizing about starting over together. Some of the emails made me physically sick. Him describing how he'd fallen out of love with me years ago, but was staying until he could afford to leave properly. That's when I decided to play the long game. If Mark wanted to spend years planning my destruction, I could spend years planning his disappointment. First, I quietly started my own secret savings account. I increased my 401k contributions to the maximum, started freelance marketing work on weekends, and began selling items we owned that he wouldn't immediately notice were gone. I became an expert at hiding money just like he was. Second, I documented everything. Screenshots of every email, photos of bank statements, and records of his secret account activity. I researched divorce law in Illinois, learned about asset division, and even consulted with a lawyer discreetly. I found out that in Illinois, assets acquired during marriage are considered marital property regardless of whose name is on the account, and that his secret savings account was actually partly mine legally. Third, I gained access to everything. I figured out his passwords, set up email forwarding so I could monitor his communications, and basically became aware of every move he made. He had no idea I knew about Jessica, about the money, about any of it. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal, For 3 years, I had to act like a loving wife while watching my husband plan my financial ruin. I cooked his favorite meals, celebrated our anniversaries, and even helped him through a difficult period when his dad was sick, all while knowing he was counting down the days until he could destroy my life. His target date was our 8th wedding anniversary. He planned to leave the day after, having drained our accounts the morning of our anniversary dinner. Poetic, right? Take me out for one last expensive meal on my own dime and then disappear. But I was ready. The morning he planned to clean out our accounts, I beat him to it. I woke up early, went to the bank, and legally withdrew my share of our marital assets, including half of his precious secret fund. In Illinois, I had every right to access those accounts. I transferred everything to accounts he couldn't touch and left him with exactly what he'd planned to leave me, enough for about 2 months of expenses. When he tried to access the money that afternoon, he found accounts with a few $100s instead of the nearly $60,000 he thought he had. I watched him panic from our kitchen window as he called the bank from his car. That evening, he came inside and pretended everything was fine. Even took me to dinner as planned. He had no idea I knew what he'd been planning or that I'd completely flipped his script. For the next week, he kept up the charade while frantically trying to figure out what happened to his money. He couldn't exactly report it missing without admitting to his secret accounts. He called in sick to work several days and spent hours on the phone with banks and even accused them of making errors. The whole time, I acted completely normal, asking about his day, wondering why he seemed stressed. Jessica started getting impatient. Their emails became frantic. She'd already given notice at her job in Portland and had started apartment hunting for them and was expecting him to arrive with his war chest. When he kept making excuses about delays, she began to suspect something was wrong. Finally, 2 weeks after his planned departure date, I decided to end it. I printed out everything, every email, every bank statement, every detail of his 5-year plan to financially destroy me. I left it all on the kitchen table with a note that simply said, "I've known for 3 years. The money you were looking for is safely in my accounts. We can discuss divorce terms when you're ready to be honest." When he came home and found everything laid out, he didn't even try to deny it. He just sat at the table staring at the papers. Later, he tried to paint himself as the victim, claiming he felt trapped in our marriage and was just trying to secure his future. He never once apologized for planning to leave me broke and homeless. The divorce proceedings were swift. Since I had documentation of his secret accounts and his plan to hide assets, the court wasn't sympathetic to his claims. He had to split the secret savings he'd built up, lost his claim to half my legitimate retirement savings, and ended up with way less than he would have gotten in a normal, honest divorce. Jessica dumped him 2 months later when she realized he was broke and facing legal fees. Turns out she was more interested in the financial security he'd promised than in rekindling old romance with a guy who spent 5 years lying to his wife. Now here I am 6 months later in my own apartment that I could afford thanks to careful planning and the money he thought he'd stolen from me. I've got my career back on track. I'm dating someone new who doesn't require elaborate deception to communicate with me. And honestly, I feel lighter than I have in years. But I can't shake this feeling that maybe I went too far. I spent 3 years living a lie, watching him plan my destruction, and then systematically dismantled his entire scheme. My friends are split. Some say he deserved everything he got. Others think I should have just confronted him when I first found out and saved us both years of misery. I keep wondering if I'm actually a terrible person for letting him believe his plan was working while I was 10 steps ahead the whole time. Was I wrong to match his deception with my own? Should I have been the bigger person and just ended things when I discovered what he was doing? Part of me feels vindicated. But another part wonders if I became just as manipulative as he was. AITA for spending 3 years planning the destruction of his plan to destroy me? Update 1. It's been 3 days since I posted, and I'm honestly overwhelmed by the response. Reading everyone's comments helped me realize I was still somewhat brainwashed by Mark's manipulation. So many people pointed out things I hadn't fully processed, like how he was literally planning to make me homeless, or how he'd been emotionally cheating for years while I supported him through family issues. I've been seeing a therapist since the divorce started, and I brought up some of your comments in our session yesterday. She helped me understand that I was still minimizing what he did and maximizing my own actions, because that's what happens when you're manipulated for years. Apparently, questioning whether you're the bad guy after someone systematically plans your financial ruin is pretty common for abuse survivors. Something interesting happened yesterday, too. I got a call from Mark asking if we could meet for coffee to clear the air. I almost said yes out of habit, but then I remembered I don't owe him closure or forgiveness or anything else. I told him I had nothing to say to him and that all communication should go through lawyers if necessary. About an hour later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Jessica. Apparently, Mark had reached out to her again last week, trying to rekindle things now that his divorce was final. She wanted me to know that she'd told him off and that she was disgusted when she learned the full extent of what he'd planned to do to me. She said she felt partially responsible and wanted to apologize. I didn't respond to her text. I figure she's dealing with her own guilt about participating in his scheme, but that's not my problem to solve. The weirdest part is that I'm starting to feel genuinely happy for the first time in years. I went on a third date with Tom, the guy I mentioned, and I actually found myself laughing without that underlying tension I had carried for so long. I didn't realize how much energy it takes to live with someone who's actively planning to betray you. My sister asked me yesterday if I miss being married, and I realized the answer is no. I miss being married to someone who actually loved me, but I was never actually married to that person. I was married to someone who was pretending while planning my downfall. Update 2. Well, this has taken an interesting turn. Yesterday, I got a call from Mark's sister, Lisa, who I'd always gotten along with during our marriage. She was crying and apologizing profusely. Turns out, Mark had borrowed $15,000 from her 6 months before he planned to leave me, claiming it was for a surprise anniversary trip. She just found out the truth about what the money was actually for. But here's the kicker. She also told me something I didn't know. Mark's parents apparently knew about his plan. Not all the details, but they knew he was unhappy and planning to leave. And they'd been encouraging him to do what's best for himself. Lisa was horrified when she realized his whole family had basically been in on keeping his secret, while I was being supportive during his father's illness. Lisa wants to testify or provide a statement for my divorce case if needed, and she's demanding Mark pay back the money he essentially obtained under false pretenses. She's also gone no contact with him, which is apparently causing drama in their family. The other bombshell came from my lawyer. Mark's firm has been conducting an internal investigation because someone reported suspicious activity in some client accounts. My lawyer can't get details due to confidentiality, but the timing suggests Mark might have been playing fast and loose with more than just our marriage finances. If he was skimming from client accounts to fund his escape plan, he could be facing criminal charges on top of the divorce proceedings. I don't know how to feel about this. Part of me is vindicated that I wasn't wrong about his character. But another part of me is horrified that I was married to someone potentially stealing from clients. It makes me question everything about the last 8 years. Tom and I had a long conversation about all of this last night. He's been incredibly patient with my emotional roller coaster, and he pointed out something that hit me hard. He said that the fact that I'm still questioning whether I was wrong to protect myself shows how much Mark damaged my sense of reality. He's right. I spent so long being gaslit that I was still doing it to myself. I'm trying to focus on moving forward, but it's hard when new revelations keep coming out about how deep his deception went. Update 3. I can't believe I'm writing this, but Mark was arrested yesterday. The investigation at his firm uncovered that he'd been embezzling client funds for over 2 years, not just for his escape plan, but to fund his secret communications with Jessica, including several trips to Portland I never knew about, and apparently some pretty expensive gifts. The total amount he stole was over $80,000. His plan wasn't just to leave me broke. He was literally stealing money to finance his new life. When I think about how I questioned whether I was too harsh on him, I feel sick. This man was a criminal who was planning to destroy my life and disappear. Lisa called me this morning to tell me that Mark had called her from jail, asking her to bail him out and loan him money for a lawyer. She told him absolutely not, and that she was considering pressing charges for the money he'd fraudulently borrowed from her too. And the craziest part, his parents are still defending him. They're claiming he was driven to desperate measures because he was so unhappy. Lisa told them exactly what she thought of that logic and has basically disowned the whole family. My lawyer says the criminal charges actually strengthen my position in the divorce because they prove he was hiding assets and income. There might even be restitution money coming my way if they recover funds from his accounts. Jessica apparently found out about the arrest through mutual college friends and sent me another text. This time, she was thanking me for not responding to her earlier message because she realized she'd been trying to make herself feel better rather than actually apologizing. She said seeing him get arrested made her realize how much worse his character was than she'd even known. I'm finally starting to feel like I can close this chapter. Tom and I are talking about taking a weekend trip together, something I haven't done in years because Mark always had excuses about money or work. It's strange to realize that I can just decide to do something without having to navigate around someone else's secret agenda. To everyone who told me I wasn't the problem, thank you. I needed to hear that I had the right to protect myself from someone who was planning to leave me homeless and broke. And to those who pointed out that his actions were criminal level deception, you were more right than any of us knew. Story 2. So, I, 28 female, have been married to my husband, 29 male, for a little over a year now. We dated for 4 years, were engaged for about a year, and then finally got married. My husband is truly the most supportive, kind, loving person I have ever known. I couldn't ask for a better partner. The issue, as you've probably guessed, is my mother-in-law, my husband's mom. For the sake of the story, let's just call her Linda. When my husband and I were still dating, Linda seemed thrilled about me, at least on the surface. She'd send me texts about how happy she was that her son had found such a good person. She'd invite me to family dinners, and she'd always say how nice it was that I was going to be part of the family someday. It felt genuine at the time. I thought I had lucked out in the in-law department. I had heard horror stories from friends about nightmare mother-in-laws, and I thought, thank goodness mine is actually nice. But everything changed after we got engaged. It was like a light switch flipped. Linda suddenly got cold, distant, and kind of weird about me. She stopped calling me by my name entirely, and I do not mean she just forgot or slipped up occasionally. I mean she actively refused to say my name. When we'd be at a gathering or she'd introduce me to someone, she'd say things like, "Oh, this is the woman my son is into. This is his girlfriend," even after we were engaged. "This is who he's seeing right now." It was bizarre. People would look at me with this confused expression like, "Why doesn't she know your name?" I tried to smile through it, but inside, I was boiling. I mean, come on. I had been in her life for 4 years at that point. It was clearly deliberate. At first, I thought maybe she just needed time to adjust to the idea of her son getting married. So I gave her space. I did not want to cause drama, so I just mentioned it to my husband and let him handle it. He talked to her multiple times, but every time she would brush it off and say she was just joking or that I was too sensitive. It only got worse after the wedding. We had a small but beautiful ceremony. Even that day, she couldn't bring herself to say my name. She told her side of the family, "This is who," my husband's name, "decided to marry." No name, no daughter-in-law, just passive-aggressive nonsense. Every time we saw her after the wedding, it was the same story. I'd show up with my husband and she'd introduce me as his wife or the woman he married, but never once by my name. It was maddening. I tried different approaches. I tried being overly kind and winning her over. I tried pulling back and keeping my distance. I even tried directly addressing it once, very politely, only to be told I was imagining things. It wasn't just the name thing either. The whole time, she treated me like I did not belong. If I offered to help cook or clean, she'd shoo me away. If I tried to join conversations, she'd ignore me or change the subject. It was clear she did not want me there. I think deep down, she just couldn't stand the idea that her son was starting a life with me and that she wasn't the center of his world anymore. Fast forward to a few months ago, I found out I was pregnant. We were so excited. It's our first child and also the first grandchild on both sides of the family. And guess what? The second she found out, Linda flipped again. Suddenly, I was the daughter she always wanted. I was getting texts from her every day. She wanted to buy us baby clothes. She wanted to come to the doctor's appointments. She wanted to help with the nursery. She also started posting on Facebook about how she was so blessed to have such a wonderful daughter-in-law. The same woman she couldn't even call by name for a year. It was clear that this had nothing to do with me as a person. She just cared about the baby, her grandchild. I wasn't an actual person in her eyes. I was just the vessel delivering her grandchild. I felt so fake having to deal with her again. But I decided to be civil for the sake of keeping the peace during my pregnancy. Well, this brings us to the dinner party. We planned a small dinner with close family and friends to officially announce the pregnancy in person. We'd already told our parents, but this was for the rest of the extended family and some friends. I was nervous about it because I knew Linda would be there, probably trying to act like Mother of the Year, but I wanted the focus to be on us and the baby. So the night of the dinner comes. Everyone is mingling, having drinks, chatting. When it came time for the announcement, my husband and I stood up, thanked everyone for coming, and shared the news that we were expecting. The room exploded with cheers and congratulations. Everyone was hugging us, giving us love. It was a really sweet moment. Then, at some point during the mingling afterwards, a friend of mine who did not know Linda very well asked me, "Oh, and who is this lovely lady?" while pointing to Linda. And I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was months of pent-up frustration. Maybe it was pregnancy hormones. Maybe it was just the fact that I had finally snapped from all her fake kindness lately. Without missing a beat, I smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, that's my husband's elderly roommate." There was a beat of silence. Then a couple of people chuckled awkwardly. Some just looked surprised. Linda's face, I will never forget the look on her face. She looked like someone who had slapped her. She didn't say anything at the time. She just kind of froze and gave this tight, forced smile. The rest of the night went on, but you could tell she was fuming inside. Later that night, after we got home, my husband told me that she pulled him aside before leaving and absolutely ripped into him. She called me rude, disrespectful, ungrateful, and said that I had humiliated her in front of everyone. The next morning, I woke up to a long, angry text from her telling me that I clearly hated her, that she had done so much for me, that she was the grandmother of my child and deserved to be treated with respect, and that she did not know if she could ever forgive me. Now she's playing the victim, posting passive-aggressive things on Facebook, texting extended family members about how badly I treated her, and telling everyone how devastated she is. My husband thinks it was hilarious and that it served her right. But he also admitted that maybe I shouldn't have done it at such a happy occasion and that it might just fuel more drama now. Some of my friends think it was a boss move and that she had it coming after treating me like an afterthought for so long. Others think I should have taken the high road and not let her get to me, especially now that she's finally being nice. To be honest, I didn't plan to do it. It just slipped out, and while part of me feels a little bad about making the night about that, another part of me feels like, well, someone had to call her out in some way. Now I'm not sure if I really crossed the line or if I was just standing up for myself in the only way I could after a year of this crap. So, AITA for introducing my mother-in-law as my husband's elderly roommate at our pregnancy announcement dinner. Update 1. A lot of people asked for an update, and well, things took an interesting turn. After the dinner, mother-in-law, Linda, kept her passive-aggressive streak going full force. She was posting on Facebook daily about being disrespected, making vague references to certain people in the family who did not value elders, and texting extended relatives about how awful I was. For about a week, I ignored it. My husband told her to calm down, but she kept going. Then, out of nowhere, she invited us to a tea at her house because she wanted to clear the air. Against my better judgment, my husband convinced me we should go and try to resolve things. So we went. At first, she was cold and dramatic, going on about how humiliated she was. But then came the twist. She suddenly pulled out a gift box and handed it to me, saying she wanted to make peace. I was stunned. I opened the box and inside was a personalized apron that read, "Future Grandma's favorite daughter-in-law, me." You guys, the woman who refused to say my name for a year had now not only printed it on a giant apron, but added favorite as if the past never happened. But here's the kicker. Tucked inside the box was a little contract. Yes, a literal printed sheet of paper listing grandma access agreements. Things like weekly visits required. I get to babysit first. I am called grandma, not nana, granny, etc. I am present for the first holidays. And at the bottom, a space for me to sign. I was floored. My husband burst out laughing. I just calmly slid the paper back to her and said, "I'll think about it." And then we left. Now she's back to posting about how some people won't even sign a simple agreement for family harmony. At this point, I'm honestly just amused. She wants to rewrite history, act like we are besties now that I'm pregnant, and contractually bind me to give her priority access to our child? No thanks. For now, we're keeping our distance again, but wow, if I thought calling her my husband's elderly roommate was petty, this move definitely wins. Might update again if she escalates, and knowing her, she probably will. Update 2. Hi, you wanted an update, and boy, do I have one. Buckle up, because Linda's antics have gone from annoying to completely unhinged. After the last peace tea, where she tried to make me sign her grandma access agreement, yes, still ridiculous, we decided to limit contact for a while. I told my husband I needed space for my stress levels and for the baby. For about 2 weeks, things were quiet. No texts, no calls, and oddly, no Facebook rants. I thought maybe she'd finally calm down. Then, a package arrived at our house, addressed to me. No note, no sender listed, just a large, beautifully wrapped box. I assumed it was a random baby gift. Inside, a handmade scrapbook. On the cover, Our Growing Family. At first, I thought maybe Linda was trying to do something sweet, but when I opened it, my jaw hit the floor. Page after page, she had filled it with photoshopped pictures of us, her, my husband, me, and in every single one, she had replaced my face with hers. Wedding photos, her face over mine. Engagement party, same. Our couple vacation photos from Instagram, now it was her with my husband in every shot. Even a photo from when we got a puppy, my face gone, her face grinning back. To make it even creepier, on the final page there was a giant text bubble that said, "The real Mrs. husband's last name." I was speechless. My husband came home and saw the scrapbook and immediately said, "Okay, that's it. She's lost it." He called her right away. At first, she denied sending it, but then admitted she had, claiming it was a harmless joke and that pregnancy hormones must be making me overreact. But here's the unique twist. While on the call, my husband put her on speaker, and guess what she let slip? She's been attending this Reclaiming the Mother-Son Bond workshop online, a Facebook group for mothers who feel like their daughters-in-law are stealing their sons. Apparently, she got the idea for the scrapbook from other women in the group. They encouraged her to manifest her place in the family by literally rewriting memories. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. My husband immediately told her that until she got help, she would have no contact with us, especially not with our future child. That led to another explosion from her, more Facebook posts, more relatives messaging us, asking what was going on, etc. But at this point, the mask is off. Everyone can see how unhinged she's acting. I am honestly not even mad anymore. I am just creeped out. The scrapbook is now in the locked drawer in case we ever need to show it to anyone. And yes, my husband is now insisting on a password-protected photo album for all future baby photos. Can't say I blame him. So Reddit, I thought this whole elderly roommate joke would be the peak of the drama. Turns out I was very wrong. I'll keep you posted. If she starts photoshopping herself into my ultrasound pics, we are going full no contact. Thanks again for all the support. You guys called it. This woman is something else. Update 3. After the scrapbook incident, my husband and I went full no contact with Linda. We blocked her on our phones and social media. My husband also informed the rest of the family about what had been happening, complete with photos of the scrapbook as proof. Most of the relatives were horrified and supportive. A couple of people tried to defend her, but once they saw the scrapbook, they backed off. The big twist? My husband discovered the Facebook Reclaiming the Mother-Son Bond group was full of similar stories, and one of his cousins is now trying to report it for encouraging obsessive behavior. As for Linda, she apparently tried to apologize by sending a massive floral arrangement with a card addressed to my precious grandbaby's real mother. Yep, meaning herself. That sealed it. Full no contact remains. We are focusing on the baby and our future. Honestly, I'm just relieved we saw her true colors before the baby arrives. Thanks again, Reddit. Your advice and support kept me sane through all this. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.